Hello. I want to talk to you a little bit about sort of the last stage of a writing process for a given document, a given text, before you actually submit it or turn it over to somebody who's going to read it. And before we talk about that, I want to tell you a story. So when I was a senior in high school, I had the English teacher who would actually end up probably persuading me um, that I wanted to become an English teacher as well. So he was a very old school, because high school was a little while ago for me, a very old school teacher. He believed in mocking kids and grading them tough. Uh, he inspired me because he asked critical questions and made me think, and that's what made me really want to become a teacher myself. But when he graded, he wasn't always kind. And he was grading one of my papers once, and I remember clearly what the effects of this was. I wrote a paper, it was like a 4-page paper for a senior high school class. And on the first page of the paper, I wrote ALLOT, a lot. And a lot there was, I did not mean like you allot a certain amount of money to your bills, but I meant a lot, like many, which is of course a space LOT, two different words. And when I wrote a lot, he circled it in red and wrote in the margins a lot, exclamation point, -5. You turn the page, at the top of the page in the first couple of sentences, I wrote ALLOT. He circled it a little harder. There's more of an indentation. Wrote a lot, underline, 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 exclamation point, -5. At the bottom of page 2, I wrote a lot, and he circled it 3 times, wrote a lot, all capitals, underline, 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 circling that, -5. On page 3, about the middle of page 3, I needed to say there were many things, and because I was a senior in high school, my vocabulary wasn't as developed at that point, I said a lot again, and ALLOT, and he put a big X in the middle of the paper and wrote in the margin, "You are an idiot." As if it was kind of funny because you knew the teacher, but it was also not exactly very nice. As if I could have learned from the bottom of page 1 to the top of page 2 that a lot should have changed. Of course not. How am I going to learn that? I'm not there with him. He's not grading me as I write it. Now, the truth is, I've never forgotten that. It did have an impact on me, but it also has always made me feel really, really stupid when I make the same error. We all make errors in our writing. I don't grade on grammar. I don't grade on mistakes. I don't grade you on punctuation. I don't grade you on formatting. I grade on your ideas, and I grade on what you produce and how you produce it in meeting the terms of an assignment. That said, it is kind of important sometimes to really pay attention to the text that you're turning in or the text that you hand somebody in a professional situation when you are writing within the job. Being able to write a text that makes sense and that does not distract people with the ways that it doesn't meet their expectations is important. So I want to show you a document and talk about some strategies that you can proofread that you can use while proofreading. So as I move over to this document, it's important to say that proofreading is not editing and it is not revising. Revising is the more complex act of thinking about the overall effects of your paper, the effects of your rhetoric, the evidence that you're using, and how you're talking about all these things, and working to develop the power of your paper through making substantive changes in what you're saying. Editing is just going to different parts of the paper and making changes to make them more correct or more effective. Proofreading is the thing that you do when you look at this document you're about to hand somebody and say, Does it appear the way that I want it to appear? Is it going to meet the context of that writing, of that situation? So you actually proofread a Facebook post or an Instagram post or a text very quickly, probably, but you do proofread it. You proofread a major essay before you turn it in for a class. You proofread your taxes before you turn in your taxes. Let's talk about proofreading. Proofreading can be overwhelming because nobody likes to look at their own writing critically because of like what happened with me with my English teacher in high school. It makes you feel stupid when you see a mistake. However, let's think about some ways that you can proofread that might actually help you out. 1, record your paper out loud into your phone. Read the exact words of the paper as written. Don't autocorrect. If possible, have someone else record the paper. It's helpful to hear your paper in someone else's voice. In either case, read the paper slowly and pause between sentences. Next, replay the recording with your paper open on your computer. Listen to what you say. Does it sound right? Do you stumble? And then, when you notice that something doesn't sound right, pause the recording and edit. Let's look at an example. Here's a sample paper written by a student. Let's take a look. This is not an actual student. Let's take a look at the paper. Choosing a college. Choices for me have not always come easily. In deciding what college I wanted to attend after high school, many other options were considered. The distance, my future career, and which schools my friends were attending. After a lot of months of pondering and asking for advice from my family and friends and family, I chose Henry Ford Community College. You might say that choosing the college you will be attending is the hardest decision you will ever make. I was uncertain whether or not this school was the best choice for me. After all things considered, in my opinion, I think it was a wise decision. As we read through that paragraph, we can hear a couple places where my voice stumbles. We can also hear a couple of things where it's not a couple of sentences where the idea is not entirely clear. But more importantly, as we're hearing that and watching the words on the screen, we can see some problems arising. Choices for me have not always came easily. I actually might have read that as come. So we can see that there's a typo that we should probably have fixed when we do a proofreading. In deciding what college I want to attend after high school, many other options were considered. This is a verb agreement problem. Want is present tense, were is past subjunctive, something like that. Who knows? So reading a paper out loud can be a very effective technique. Here's another technique. Read the paper backwards. Read each sentence of the paper in reverse order. Pause after each sentence and ask if the sentence makes sense by itself. Look for typo or miswritten sentences. So if we go to the end of this paper, everything I do at Henry Ford is done by choice. So choosing to go here was the first step to 4 years of choices. I actually like the way that kind of sounds, but there's a little bit of vagueness there. Everything was done by choice. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Maybe if I had read the rest of the paragraph before that, I would understand more, but that maybe is a place to work. Go to the next sentence. Those teachers that I did not enjoy having has not made me lose my respect for the rest of the faculty. This is a verb agreement problem. Having, has, should be having, have. As we read it backwards, we might be able to pinpoint some more problem areas. The best method I like is the third one. Make an editing worksheet out of your paper. Space 5 times after each sentence of your paper, print the paper out, work on each sentence individually as an individual editing problem. Not all sentences will need correction, but you might notice many more issues by isolating each sentence. So let's do that with this paper. Let's actually create a worksheet out of our own paper. You know those worksheets you used to get in 9th grade when the teacher didn't want to talk to you anymore? and you had to fix all the problems and turn it back in. And sometimes there were sentences that didn't have problems and you fixed something anyway and you got it wrong. Well, let's take a look at this one. So I'm gonna just do a worksheet with the first paragraph. We're not gonna do all of them. But if I separate each of these sentences, now I can look at it individually. Choices for me have not always came easily. Choices for me have not always came easily. Well, there's a problem there. Came, should be come. But maybe I also think about, does that sentence really say what I want it to say at the start of a paper? So I can fix this. If I take this out and handwrite, then I can say choices for me have not always come easily. Or maybe I want to fix it and do some editing or some revising, not only just edit it. Educational choices have always been difficult for me. Okay. There's a couple of possibilities. In deciding what college I want to attend after high school, many other options were considered. So this is a awkward sentence. It's a little bit of passive voice, and it's also got two different verb tenses. So I want to fix that. In deciding what college I wanted to attend, many other options were considered. If I want to make that a more active sentence, I can say, I considered many options, many college options while in high school. And that fixes it. That fixes the passive voice and it fixes the verb tense problem. The distance, my future career, and which schools my friends were attending. That's a sentence fragment. Mr. Lawrence, my 12th grade English teacher, would probably write frag with exclamation points. We can say, I'm just going to copy and paste, so I have to type all that. Some of the options I considered were the distance, and we should probably clarify that more, of the college from my home, the college programs and my future career, and whether or not my friends from high school would be attending. And the last sentence, after a lot of months pondering, or the next sentence, I'm going to actually stop there. You get the idea. The idea here is that you are reading your paper much more closely, much more attentively when you are reading it at this sentence level. And here we're not necessarily working on ideas, although this might help us clarify our ideas more. What we're working on is how somebody else might be reading the paper. And this is the problem with proofreading. If you don't know how somebody else is going to read your paper, if you've never really thought about that, then, and all you're worried about is whether or not you did it right or whether or not you're going to get a good grade, then you may not know how to proofread. And it's a skill. It's something you have to learn how to do. So, and it's something that's kind of difficult because when you look at your paper that you've been working on for 2 hours, for 2 days, for 2 weeks, hopefully longer, when you've been working on that, when you're looking at that paper, you know the words so well, it's hard for you to see problems. These methods change it up a little bit, change up the way your paper appears, and might help you avoid this. I hope that's helpful to you. I hope you are thinking about the work that you're producing and how you're allowing that work to look for others. If you've got any questions or any comments on this, please let me know. Take care.